But let's chat about insurance strategies, maybe deferring tax I love talking tax strategies because I think it was Benjamin Franklin, I may have it wrong, that said you're not really responsible for paying anything more than what the law requires in taxes. So if there's a way to follow the law and minimize your tax liability, to me, that's good. And I don't say that's avoiding your fair share, because the government takes more than their fair share and they waste it, my opinion. But let's chat with Eric Bell this morning because he has some guidance on this and some thoughts. Good morning.
Good morning, Ron.
So taxes.
Yeah.
We're right in that time period right now where, unfortunately, people think that they do tax planning right now. And I say that tax planning is done from May through December. And February, March, April, you just pay the bill.
And November and December are the dates that you are panicking.
Right.
Those 2 months, yeah.
Yeah, because you just figured out, I got this bill coming up, and what am I going to do?
Yeah, no. I think the 2 biggest things that will mess some people up are tax and your health. Those are 2 biggest things that will take away your wealth, tax and health.
And sometimes the tax takes your wealth, so then it's 1 + 1 = 3, and you're in trouble.
That's right. That's right.
I had good health until I looked at my tax bill.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways, for businesses and individuals to reduce their taxes. But you got to have an open mind. Someone told me books, umbrellas, and the minds don't work unless they're open.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So you got to be open-minded to it. Be willing to go ahead and listen. Listen costs you nothing, and then try to move forward with some different things.
Well, one of the things I talk about on here frequently is we bring on thoughts that are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And just because we bring them on and share them doesn't mean they're right for everybody, but they're the questions that we open up are probably right for everybody.
No, I agree. I mean, it's not a one-stop shop. What one person does for their business, one can't do for the other business, and same thing on an individual basis. And then we were talking earlier, Ron, when you look at the families nowadays, you might have children from a previous marriage, combining households. It gets complicated.
Yeah, it is a complication that I don't know anybody. I see Jeff Clark is with us. Good morning, Jeff. I don't know anybody that really that I've come across. Maybe you have that is the jack of all, where you can get every piece of information you need.
No, it takes a team.
Right?
One person can't be all things to everybody, or one company can't be all things to everybody. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you and I were just chatting before we went on air that you've got a firm where you're helping people going from a tax planning standpoint into the next steps or areas. Still need the CPA, but I assume you're not a CPA and a tax person.
No,
me neither. We don't give tax advice, but we understand enough to say, hey, let's talk to the CPA about this. And as long as they don't have a big ego and they're willing to learn,
that's hard. That's hard to find without a big ego. Most CPAs got pretty big egos.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've got the attorneys out there that need that we can help. And not that we know more than they do.
Right.
But in one tiny sphere, we might have something that we can share.
Well, it's a collaboration. We're going to share something with you. Take the time to learn it for your client and see if it's going to benefit them. It's kind of that easy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a real challenge.
No.
So just, I guess, to kick things off is, where do you think taxes are going? Are they going to go up, down, sideways?
I don't think we have a choice. When you look at how our spending is right now, we're at $34 trillion. 4 things over the federal budget go to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and just the interest on our debt, which is continually growing. And that was before we built out the Ukraine, before we started doing stuff in Israel, and also the Palestinian relief, I guess. We're spending a lot of money. So, it leaves 8 cents for a lot of different things. The list is long: child nutrition programs, Homeland Security, food and safety inspection, DEA, FBI. I mean, the list is long, but we got 8 cents left to spend on all those different things. The White House, Congress. So I'm
going to challenge you on that a little.
All right, go ahead.
So I was on the phone the other day with a gentleman, and he had the same concept. In fact, he's going to be on the program the middle of next month.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, taxes have to go up, and for the same reasons, right? He said, even if we cut out 100% of our discretionary spending, we still are in the red.
Yeah.
And he happens to be in the fitness industry
Mm.
or was. And my comment or my thought, because I didn't challenge him, I'll do it on the air, is I can't exercise enough to lose weight, right? I've got to stop eating.
Okay.
I'm going to challenge the idea on the taxes. We can't tax enough to get out of this problem.
No, not right now. No.
But what we really have to do, the only solution I think there is spending, number one, where we can. I mean, I'm a big defense guy, but I think there's waste in the Defense Department. But I think that if we can increase the revenue side, that's going to be an easier way of getting out of things than the idea of taxing more.
Well, the only source of revenue for the government is tax.
It is. The revenue is tax, but in many instances we've seen where when various leaders of ours will lower taxes, the revenue goes up. So because business goes out there and makes more revenue.
Yeah, that's correct.
And the taxes go up. So I don't know if they can tax us more as far as from a tax rate, but we pay more by the private sector going out there and being more innovative.
Well, Ron, when you and I were born, I think the highest marginal tax bracket was 91%.
Right.
Now we're looking at the lowest recent tax brackets in recent history. Come 2026, January 1st, 2026, they're going to bump back up to where they were when President Obama was in office, unless somebody does something different. But I'm anticipating to go even higher than that.
Really?
Because we got to cover ourselves. And that's, no one's talking about it because it's an election year, so no one's talking about that. But that's going to become part of the conversation.
Yeah, and you're right, but it's always an election year.
Yeah.
Right. Right now we're in election year for president.
Right.
Right after we inaugurate whoever becomes president, then we're going to be in an election year for Congress people.
Right.
So the representatives aren't going to want to raise taxes when they're coming up. And the one thing I think most people will understand is the only thing that politicians really want is re-election.
That's true. Power and re-election. That's it. That's it.
Continue our conversation. Eric Bell, Bell Insurance Solutions, is with us this morning talking about, it's interesting, Bell Insurance Solutions. And we've been talking about taxes. Well, why do we talk about taxes? Well, everybody has to deal with them. And some people have a solution, Eric Bell, about maybe there's a way to defer them, make a little more money with your money before you have to give it to the government, have strategies where maybe the government doesn't get quite as much. So let's chat about some of those ideas. So what's your thought on that, Eric? Is there ways that we can strategize to minimize our current tax liability?
Yeah, I think for people trying to save for retirement, everyone's doing the 401k, 403b, 457, 401a, things of that sort. But when you think about it, right now, your effective tax rate, not your marginal tax rate, is a lot lower than what you think you're paying. And you don't have that much of a tax savings.
Explain that a little bit.
Well, your marginal tax rate is the last dollar that you pay taxes on that tax bracket.
Okay.
So 24%, 37%, whatever it is, how much money you make. But your effective tax rate, we have a progressive tax system, is kind of the average of all those different tax brackets up to your last dollar.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So someone in a 24% tax bracket on their last dollar, for example, their effective tax rate is probably in the 18, 17% range.
Okay. So you get that by just dividing your tax liability by your income? Is that how you figure that out?
Yeah, that's basically what you're doing. Yeah, that's basically what you're doing. But your CPA can give you a more accurate number. Your enroll agent can give you a more accurate number for you specifically based on your deductions. But one of the biggest fears I think people have is outliving their money.
Right.
So, how do you do that? When you look at a 401k, all those different things, you put money in while you're being taxed. It was kind of a deduction for you. But now you're going to have to pay taxes possibly in a higher tax environment. We were just talking about how taxes have to go up. So now you got to pay taxes in a higher tax environment. I'm a proponent of taking after-tax dollars right now and putting it into an index universal life. Seeing that money grow on a tax-free basis. Historically, the returns have been 7% or greater. You can be in the market, and then now you can pull the money out, principal, interest, and any earnings that you have on a tax-free basis. So building tax-free streams of income, just doing some asset shifting. I would bet, Ron, most of your listeners are savers because they're listening to you. So it's just doing some asset shifting. If you got 3% match at your company on a 401k, Do it up to 3% because that's free money. Anything over and above that, you want to go ahead and shift it into what I would think an index universal life.
And you and I never even talked about this concept until we got here this morning. I've been talking about index universal life policies for 25 years now.
Oh, yeah.
And people look at them, and I'm going to throw a little bit of math here before we continue our conversation. Let's just throw a little bit of math. If you put $300 into your 401k, what is your goal? Your goal is for that to grow to, say, $3,000. I'm just using small numbers. If you're in a 30% tax bracket, right now you're paying $90 on that. And the idea is that, did I do that math right? If it goes to $3,000, you're going to pay about $1,000, $900 on that. Would you rather pay $90 in taxes or $900 in taxes? Simple math.
Simple math. Real simple. But
Right?
just a lot of people don't look at it.
Right, because they don't know that they don't know there's other options.
No, they don't. And the other options have been tainted over history. You know, insurance was a bad word. I remember when you and I were brokerage people, we were selling stocks and bonds. Insurance people were considered sleazy.
Right.
Plus, the products weren't what they are today. You know, they've made a lot of improvements in the products today.
And I know that there's some products out there that'll even give you a downside guarantee.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So they protect you so you don't lose money.
One of the things your listeners want to watch out for is if you're doing an accumulation strategy within an index universal life, you'll have an odd number, a very minimal number wrapped around the cash to keep it tax free. So it won't be $1 million policy. It'd be like, if you're putting 30 grand, it'd be like $127,432, some odd number. And every year you put more in, that number will creep up. So
when I used to do it, and I don't know if it's still the same way, when I used to do these, you basically were looking for a low death benefit.
Correct.
And a high cash value.
Exactly. For cash accumulation.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you were borrowing against it instead of taking income.
That's right.
So it's kind of like a mortgage refinance. When you refinance a loan, you don't pay taxes on the money you're taking out because you're borrowing it.
That's right. Now, when you pass away, that money will be offset by your death benefit, but your beneficiaries will still walk away with something. So I like that self-completion also.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of benefits there that people don't think about. And it's not that, the biggest part of it, in my opinion, is just it's the ignorance, right? We don't know what we don't know, so why would we know it?
Yeah, ignorance is not bliss, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, like you said, people think life insurance. Well, I'm never going to see that money, so, when I die, my heirs will get it, but I need to be able to live when I retire, and they don't think of it as a retirement strategy.
Well, okay, it's a retirement strategy, what we were just talking about,
Right.
But you can also use it for protection. And you and I were talking about this before the show, about having a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider on it. I think that's something that a lot of people need to take a look at if they haven't looked at it already.
Explain that a little bit. What's a long-term care rider?
Well, I'll use myself as an example. I have $1 million policy. And in that $1 million policy, because I have what they call a long-term care rider, if I became sick and needed the money for health reasons, I can pull out a max of $20,000 a year if I needed it.
Okay.
Now, right now, nothing costs really that much, but I'm looking 30, 40 years out, hopefully, that I might need it. If not, now, if I don't need it for long-term care and I pass away,
$20,000 a year,
$20,000 a month.
A month. Wow.
Yeah, $20,000 a month.
Okay.
Now, if I don't use it and I pass away, have a heart attack or something like that, at least $1 million is going to my trust. So it's not a use it or lose it type of proposition.
And so there's another component of what we talk about. So your insurance goes to your trust.
Correct.
Okay. Now, do most people have their insurance in their trust or insurance outside the trust?
I think most people have their insurance outside the trust.
Okay.
The beneficiary of my insurance policies are on my trust because
Okay.
I have a complex family configuration. So married, second time, I got children, stepchildren, as well as children. Want to try to take care of everybody, and including my current wife, for sure.
Gotcha. Okay. So again, those issues are all things that you don't find when you go on google.com, right? So some people have it in their trust. Some people don't have their insurance in their trust. Eric just described in his situation what his situation is. Yours may or may not be the exact same, which is why you consult with a professional insurance person. You consult with a professional or a licensed attorney. You consult with a CPA, and you have all these people. And now it's even easier because it used to be, 20 years ago, you'd have to go and meet them all.
Yeah.
Now You set up a Zoom meeting and you
That's
have
it.
everybody together.
There you go. That's it.
Right?
Like we said early on, a team. You got to have a team.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Continue our conversation. We're chatting with Eric Bell this morning, talking about tax strategies and insurance strategies. Insurance, for those of you that haven't been listening to Ron Siegel Radio, we actually did a segment. Josh, I don't know if you have the link for it, but we did a segment. I've done it for 20 years now. It's how to retire on $15,000 a month with no 401k, no IRA, and just using your mortgage. And part of the thing I've been talking about for 25 years is exactly what Eric Bell just told us about, was using that indexed universal life policy. Now, you've got to do it the right way. And I'm not going to get into the specifics. If you want the specifics, you've got to call Eric Bell and talk to him about it. But there's something called a MEC, and you don't want that.
Nope.
So you have to do this the right way and make sure that you're not just going and putting a boatload of money in. But Eric, I did this class over at Chapman University, and I was talking about retiring on $15,000 a month with no 401k, no IRA. Every 5 years, you take out all of the equity out of your real estate and put that money. And again, I am not giving financial advice because FINRA doesn't like this. Take that money and put it into a IUL, Index Universal Life Policy, and watch it grow while your real estate grows. And after 15 years, you're going to have about $18,000 after your mortgage payment.
And that real estate deduction is also deductible. Mortgage payments are deductible.
Right.
The interest on mortgage payments is deductible. Yeah.
So
it's a win-win.
Yeah. So you're helping yourself. But again, Merrill Lynch didn't like this. FINRA didn't like this because they don't want you to borrow money to make money. It's crazy. But the bottom line is, so let's talk about businesses. Is there a way that a business might be able to use some of these strategies to minimize their liabilities?
Well, yeah, businesses. There's a tax code called 831B.
Okay.
Which was for captive insurance companies. Those are under heavy scrutiny by the IRS now. The thing I didn't like about it is that you had to use a lot of capital. I think the limit now is $2 million. You put that $2 million to a captive insurance company to reduce your overall taxable liability, but you could have probably used that to hire more employees, buy more machinery, or whatever you're doing. There's another way to do it, which is not under IRS scrutiny because it's real insurance, and you don't have to pay a lot to put it together. So what you're doing is you're inserting something, an expense against your gross, something that could possibly be insured, but probably will never have a claim. So possibly insured, but never a claim. And also that premium gets financed at 90%. So you don't have to come up with 10%, but you get the full effect of the overall deduction against your gross income.
Think about, so these are just strategies to minimize your tax liability. Now, let me ask you this one, and I think I know the answer, but if I have a small corporation, a family corporation, myself and my wife, and maybe my kids, is the corporation allowed to buy life insurance for us as part of our compensation plan?
Yeah, there's you can do that as part of compensation as a deferred comp. There's other ways to do it. We can do it for a tax-free comp also. I could share that with listeners if I ever talk to them. And then there's also key man insurance, key person insurance, things of that sort. That if one of the owners died or one of the key people died, you'd be able to replace their income or replace them supposedly with a life insurance policy.
Well, and that's important for partnerships, especially
because you don't want to be I may not want to be in business with my partner's husband or my partner's wife, right? Because they don't know what I know, and now we got a big fight. So I can just pay them off, and they'll be happy, and we keep walking. Yeah,
and that's something I've watched over time, where you need to have the insurance, but you also have to have the contract set up between the parties.
Exactly.
Because if you miss one or the other, then I watched it where one of the partners died, and the partner got the insurance money, the $1 million insurance money. Corporation was paying it, but there was no contract in place.
Yeah.
So he never paid it to the deceased partner's wife.
Well, and a lack of coordination. We talked about it earlier, Ron. It's a team effort. You got to bring in the business attorney. You got to bring in everybody when you're doing stuff like this to make sure it's going to work out.
And you have to follow their guidance. I mean, if you don't like the guidance, that's one thing, but follow the guidance or confirm the guidance so you have it from the estate planning standpoint, in the tax standpoint, and the insurance and the financial advisors, and get everybody together and make sure you really all are on the same page.
Yeah, and the guidance needs to be there just so you can go ahead and just think about it. Have some options. If you don't have the guidance, you don't have any options. So you don't know what you're doing. You're just traveling blind, basically.
And one of the beauties, I just consulted with some folks over the weekend about the reverse mortgage. And I was telling them, I gave the people there a high level of it. And one of the folks said, I want you to talk to my son about this. And I said, here's what we do is we set up a Zoom call between you, your son, and myself. And if you want to bring your financial people on, that's fine too. But we record it. And that way, when you forget, which we all do, none of us can comprehend 100% of every conversation, you can refer to it. And I'm going to submit that you have a consultation with Eric Bell, and your CPA is on the line with you, and maybe your state attorney or whomever. If that's done on a Zoom call and it's recorded, we can go back and reference it as a reference guide down the road.
Yep, I agree. One of the other things, Ron, when we think about it is a lot of people. So we talked about an ongoing concern, a business that's continuing to go right now, but there's a lot of people selling businesses and selling commercial real estate.
Right.
So they have huge capital gains that they have to pay. There's several ways to defer it: deferred sales trust, Delaware statutory trust. There's all kind of different ways to defer a tax, but there's also ways to eliminate a tax. And I always tell people we got one tax code, but we got two tax systems. One tax code, but two tax systems. One tax system for those who are informed and one for those who are uninformed. That's simple. So be informed. So be informed.
And something, it's very fascinating that you say that, because so many people look at it and they say, well, Warren Buffett doesn't pay the taxes that his secretary pays. Well, he pays more in total dollars, which is really all that matters.
Right.
But the bottom line is, I bet he pays he pays more to the attorneys to minimize his tax liability than his secretary probably makes.
Oh yeah.
He's got formed.
Well, and Donald Trump kind of said it in one way. He said, I don't pay a lot in taxes because I got good advisors. Don't be mad at me because I have good advisors and you don't.
Right.
So that's kind of it's kind of a backhanded slap in the face, but that's what he said. Yeah.
But it's true.
And it's true. It's
right?
true.
Because he's not doing anything that
that's out of
Congress.
Tax code.
Yeah, he's not doing anything that Congress didn't approve.
No.
Now, if Congress doesn't like that he's doing it, change the tax code.
That's right.
Right. That's their part of the system. It's our job to pay what we have to, and sometimes you have to pay somebody. And I don't know, Eric. I'll throw this to your thoughts as well. I feel that great advice generally costs nothing.
That's true compared to what a lack of great advice would be.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? I mean, if you use Warren Buffett, you use Donald Trump, you use whomever you want to, not Hunter Biden, but because that might be the wrong way of going about it. But you use these systems and you hire these really good people, and they'll keep you out of trouble long term. And especially in insurance, it can help you tremendously long term, because a lot of people are looking at it and saying, well, long-term care is no longer available. Well, if you go out and just go online and Google long-term care, you might find that maybe it is too expensive. But that rider you talked about.
Well, what's going to really be expensive if you don't have it?
Right.
We were talking about my mom and our parents and stuff and things that are going on. If I didn't have the long-term care policy in place for my mom that I put in place in 1996, we'd have to liquidate one of her homes or pull cash flow from her rental property, but we don't have to do that. She's fully covered.
And that's called planning.
Planning, exactly.
Right. You put a plan in place, and off you go. If you want to meet Eric Bell, give me a call at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. I'd be more than happy to put you in touch.